Starting with the Milwaukee Guitar Collective. It's a 90s Les Paul Studio with the ebony fretboard. It's got an interesting refinish, but only $750. When it comes to Les Paul Studios, I still think the 90s ones are king. Now we can say the modern day studios with all their fancy bindings and other exotic colors can be more exciting if you don't want a bare bones rocker, but the 90s is just perfect because they have really nice quality ebony fretboards. They're solid chunks of guitars. I highly recommend these things. And if you can find one in player's grade condition so you don't have to pay upwards of $1,500 for one, that's just fantastic for a player. So as you're seeing in these photos, yeah, it's got a brand new finish, but for around $850 shipped, I still think this is a pretty good deal because that's not a terrible weight for one of these. It's got really cool aging to the gold hardware, which matches this kind of ivy-ish green into brown finish that apparently flip-flops depending on your lighting situation. Gibson actually authentically did this in the early 2000s, kind of a blue into green hue, but this other one decided to go for a more rustic look. Now here's the thing with refinishes online. It might look good in photos and feel like crap in person, because face it, your hand is going to come in contact with that finish. You're going to know if it's a good quality one or not. It looks pretty decent from these photos, but I thought it was interesting. During the refinish process, they actually applied that same coloring to the headstock, so technically a matching headstock. They even mod collectionified it by painting your backplates as well. However, if we zoom in here, I think we're seeing the orange peeliness of the finish back here, so maybe they took more time on the front, or maybe that's just how it's going to be all over. That's the gamble. And the other gamble is you don't know if there's any type of heel break, headstock repair. However, at the price that they're offering it, I don't think you really need to worry, because even if there is something hidden under there, as long as it was repaired well, I still think it's within the realm of possibility in their pricing, because it's not like we're missing a serial number tonight, unlike last night's episode. The only other downside, no case, just a gig bag, but I believe that's how they came in that era, although that is not the original gig bag. We at least have verification of the neck pickup being Gibson, likely the 490R 498T set. I liked it enough I made an offer, but I think they're pretty firm on that price. Our next one's by Luke Guitar Shop over in Washington. Generally speaking, a 70s SG standard is not going to be $1,300. So let's go ahead and see what's wrong with this. Right away, we can see knobs are modern day replacements. We're missing the poker chip. Somebody might have played around with our bridge because that looks like it's not slanted the proper direction. However, that's what's nice about harmonica bridges. You've got all this travel room. I believe that's one of the reasons why Gibson actually ended up starting to use those. But that does not look like a vintage pickup to me. But if you come up to the neck, I don't think that's going to be the original one either, and then we can start to see why this one's also cheap. Typical heel crack. And we can also see this is the version with the rosewood fretboard and binding. But from our first body shot, I would say that looks pretty alright. Headstock isn't obviously snapped, at least through the front peg head veneer. We still have to go through everything else, but oh my goodness, what happened to the installation of our truss rod cover? You do find them crooked sometimes, but that one just seems to be pushed over, and that looks like a replaced nut to me that may need redone. And yes, we do have a lot of fret wear. However, those are still corroded. You could probably polish those up and it would probably play okay, but you might think about a refret in the future just because of the style of frets these came stock with to begin with. Flipping over to the back, any more monkeys? Not, I mean, it looks okay back here. Even this area is fairly clean, all things considered. That neck looks like a very significantly different color, because the thing to know about the 70s is they like to use this grain fill, and you can kind of see that right here, but if you come up to the neck, we no longer have that. So that likely means some sort of a new finish going on here. And this is within the volute era, and we don't have a volute. And that is not your usual serial number font. Getting flashbacks to last night's episode. However, we actually do have an explanation. Look very closely. You can see a new headstock has actually been grafted onto this original neck, and at that time they probably just refinished the entire neck. And maybe they were able to reuse the original headstock veneer, because that does look good to me, but it might explain why it's askew. But interesting. So this new shot tells me it might actually not be a completely new headstock. it looks to me like we had a break here. Maybe they tried to repair it a few times unsuccessfully, but then they just removed a whole bunch of wood and put a whole entire new back strap on. Because you can see this is a new piece of wood right here. So that continues all the way there. That explains why they at least had to restamp the serial number. Because at first I was thinking these lines over here were from where they joined the wood, but no. Those seam lines actually appear to be very nice. That's got to just be left over from previous trauma. So headstock break and heel crack. A double whammy. And yeah, that's a little uglier on this side. We've got a rather interestingly homemade case, but better than nothing. If you're curious, how on earth do you even price something like this? Generally, a repair will devalue a guitar by anywhere between 30 and 50%. I think it's fair to say a full 50% devaluation. So that would take us to about 15-ish if we're talking top end. But then when you start modifying serial numbers, you don't really go too far below the 50%. The only thing that changes is the amount of people willing to purchase said guitar. I'd say if you could make them an offer, take it home for $1,000. As long as it's straight, it could be fun. Because another way you can find out the value is assess what this could be worth if you were to part it out. And for that, we would need to know the electronics. Looks like I was correct. Seymour Duncan, so that's like, what, $50? 498T in the bridge. Again, like $50. Not a lot of value there, unlike having the original tarbacks. And oh my goodness, I just noticed this. That's not even the original pick guard. There's no value there. It likely broke when that snapped. So $100 on the pickups, you might be able to get about 70 on the harmonica bridge. You could budget about $100 for these Gibson branded Schaller tuners. So we're about $270. And husks can vary. I would assume something like this, maybe, just maybe to the right guy, $500. Oh yeah, probably want to stay between $700 and $1,000. Here's a similar one, also on Reverb. Let's see, kind of more of a muddy brown natural hue. Looks like we got an original T-top in the bridge. That's nice. Looks like a Tony Iommi in the neck, and this is one of the ebony fretboard unbound versions. I really like that. Non-original knobs, but those look like they could have some value in and of themselves. Vintage reflectors are harder to find. Yep, still has the headstock break. It's your pretty typical one. So far from what I'm seeing, this looks like a 75 to me. If the price was the same, I'd probably go with this one. But this was very fascinating to find on Reverb. Listed by the Wood and Steel in LA, it's a Les Paul personal guitar for $3,800. We actually just recently reviewed one of these. This is the really fancy custom version of the Les Paul recording. Now, it technically predates the recording. Feel free to check out the full episode to learn more, but this was the highest end version that they had made. It's the one with the cool microphone jack up here. But I wanted to feature it on the show because a lot of times when these show up, they have minimal play wear. They're in really clean shape, but this one is like the exact opposite. Somebody took this thing and heavily gigged it. I mean, just look at the buckle rash back here. This almost looks like a reaction of some sort to something, but that is just general rubbing against someone. You can see they were trying to wield this heavy beast by putting another strap button at the back. But to see one of these in this condition, I bet would make Les proud. Somebody actually took his design and went with it and enjoyed it heavily. It has a real nice vintage patina to it, because I thought for sure somebody would have taken the low impedance electronics out or made some other extensive modifications. But I mean, from what I see just on a general first glance, nothing looks entirely out of place. This could even be a good candidate for somebody to do some sort of a funky restoration job, a la Jan Ackerman or something. However, if it was me, nah, just leave that thing alone. It's got such a cool vibe to it. They range anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 depending on condition. So this one being at just a little over 3.5. I didn't think it was that bad because you just don't see these every day. There's not a huge buyer pool for these outside of collectors or people who are just curious. And with 20 watchers in 5 hours, yeah, I think it'll probably find a home somewhere in that 3 range. But next up, one for our lefties by K9 Sound. I thought it'd be fun to look at this together because $3,500 for a vintage lefty, not the worst that I've ever seen. At first glance, looks like replaced pickups, replaced some knobs. The back actually appears to be in fairly decent shape. I can tell just by the volute shape this was Kalamazoo made. I was trying to see what was going on with these knobs. It looks like somebody has rainbows on them. In fact, those might be stickers. Here's a slightly better photo. Yeah, those are original speed knobs. They just have something that you could potentially take off. But whoa, we've got some fancy pickups in there. Some sort of a DiMarzio likely, and a rail mixed with a regular humbucker. But otherwise seems pretty clean. Just some buckle worming. Let's see, how's our serial number situation? There's not enough detail, but His listing says it's a 1980. Based on how the headstock looks and a few things that I've experienced over the years, I would say we're definitely within the ballpark there. Looks like it recently had some sort of an adjustment and might even have some additional paperwork on top of that. That's pretty cool. And if you pick it up in person, you get a free amp. This next guitar is apparently at Carter's Vintage Mudge's Music. 2017 335. I just saw this while browsing. I was like, yeah, I like that. It's got this very darkness down here, and then it abruptly stops with this diagonal-like structure, and then it just remains kind of light and airy up here. This is one of the older Memphis-made ES335s before they brought them all over into the Gibson USA facility. Well, whether that's a pro or a con, I guess I'll leave that up to you. But I don't normally like this finish, but the particular maple that they shot it over just works great. It's got a very dark neck, though. That's par for the course on these 335s. I do miss their cool truss rod covers. And as a bonus, let's check in on our friend from last night. Oh dear, what has happened?